The second point of propaganda, again, just to put it in proper context, is the ongoing discussion about corruption. Because I'm sure, again, you have seen a lot of talk about corruption and how we should fight it. And even Mr. Museveni shamelessly trying to position himself as one who can deal with corruption. And I think the latest talk was prompted by the exposure that was made by ordinary people who started that social media campaign of exhibitions of what has gone wrong. And we should thank and celebrate them for their initiative and effort. Our brothers Pius Ntongo, Agatha Twaire, is a young man called others who have been supporting them, Nicholas Opio and others who have been supporting them. And exposure, it has revealed to us, has a potent effect, has a good effect in causing those who are stealing to panic, to unruffle them. So that's where it started, with exposure. And especially the exposure of corruption in Parliament. Of course, even all the others were exposure of corruption in the health sector, the roads which are terrible, and other places. But in Parliament, they were able to point specifically to monies that were being siphoned out of the budget. Of course, earlier on, there was the Mabati crisis also in Parliament. And so, now, Mr. Museveni jumped in to say he's going to crash all this. In other words, he has now separated, he's trying to position himself as separate from this and one who can deal with it. And we need to contextualize what is going on there. So first, corruption, I would categorize it in two areas. There is, first of all, official, institutional corruption that we should, which is even more dangerous than the private corruption. Actually thrives on that official type of corruption. And Museveni has been leading both, the official and the private corruption. He is the architect, he's the constructor of the corruption system in Uganda. And he's the promoter. He promotes what he constructed and he defends it. So that's why we are in a very difficult situation. Because at the very pinnacle of power is where the problem actually comes from, grows from, and spreads to other places. And I'd like to simply remind our country, and especially Mr. Museveni, about his corruption. His corruption did not start in government. No. I have talked about some of it right from the time I interfaced with him in the bush. We started dealing with corruption. There was corruption in the bush. People getting, or some people sending us some things to use, and a few people grab them and use them. And in the bush there was something called Sizia Commander. That, if you come putting on a good trouser, say, hey, you, hiyo navaa nini? Toa, hiyo ni size yangu. In fact, fighting especially requires a lot of discipline. And of course, at that time, accountability indeed was something unheard of, largely because of the nature of operations. But even after accounting for NRM resources, what was collected from our supporters and how it was used, NRM accounts, nobody in NRM knows. And I'm talking about this with a lot of authority. And this is what later on spread to bedevil the NRA and the UPDF. And that's how the war in the north lasted 20 years. Because it became an industry for self-enrichment. On the one hand, there is what they call operation fund, operation money for commanders, which is not accounted for. And in war, that becomes, it keeps on being increased by creating all kinds of threats. Oh, this is going to happen, we need more money, and more money would be siphoned there, and so on and so forth. So we have had corruption, and again defended by Mr. Museveni. In fact, that's, I think, partly how he even got in trouble. General Muntu got in trouble with him, because General Muntu was army commander. And General Muntu thought, that he, among other things, he was in charge of discipline. And he would arrest some officers and get in trouble because of that. and I think that's why he ended up where we all are. So this corruption is not, from Museveni, the architect, is not a new thing. And when we got into government, that's why he moved quickly to capture the institutions, all institutions. Because you can't have accountability unless you have institutions that function. So he went in and captured all the institutions. Of course, in the transition, the institutions themselves had problems. He was the president, he was the Speaker of Parliament. You can't allow such a kind of thing, because Parliament is supposed to check on the executive. So if you are the Parliament and you are the executive, how do you check on yourself? And so in the Parliament, if there was something he didn't want, he would come and sit there now as the Speaker and say, now we must pass this thing today, and and then he goes back the other side to implement it. and by the time even that ended in the Constitution, because the Constitution of '95 changed that. But then he went ahead to emasculate those who were in parliament. And that emasculation of parliament has been going on until now. The parliament is officially a rubber stamp. Absolutely. There was a period of a bit of struggle after the 95 constitution. But that struggle has ended very, very firmly in his favor. I think what happened last week when he took back the budget, if there was anybody in doubt, we must have confirmed that there is no parliament, absolutely nothing. Just a house and some people there collecting some allowances, but nothing. There's no parliament. All this is official corruption. This was, so I was saying there is official and private corruption. This is official, you know. Then he went into the privatization exercise, which everybody remembers. Privatization. As a policy, it is, one could justify it. But how it was implemented was not privatization. It was personalization of what was state assets. It was taking them from the public to themselves. That's what was they called privatization. You all remember the saga of Commercial Bank and Saleh, you know? So again, public assets, all public assets, Uganda Airlines. Uganda Airlines was first of all disemboweled, whatever was internal in it, in the ground handling services at Entebbe. Disemboweled. And that was taken again by Saleh and Kutesa, the ground handling of Uganda Airlines. And that's how privatization generally happened. Taking what was public to the personal. And that's where also part of the official corruption is the nepotism and cronyism. Nepotism is corruption, you know? You can't serve in a cabinet with your wife, with your other relatives. The relatives he has in the cabinet, he has a number of relatives there in the cabinet. Of course, you had the people like the Kutesas, the Rwamiramas, you know, who are there. He comes from 48 million, 46 million, you know. Then of all the soldiers, your son is the one most qualified to be the chief of defense forces, you know. Your brother in charge of wealth creation. Your in-law has a budget also to promote our exports, I don't know, and what, you know. And the crony is appointed in parastatals, people who manage authorities and so on. Wherever there is money, they smell where there is money, you'll find a relative there. And that, if it is not corruption, what is it? Because, first of all the others who are down there, they are looking at him and also implementing what he is doing. And you can't blame them. You know, they are learning from what is going on up there. But possibly the biggest source of corruption is the disempowerment of the population whose money is being stolen. That they have no say. You can steal and do whatever and get away with it. People have no say. Whose money you are stealing have no say. Because the say of the public should come at elections. That's when people should check you. Say, no, you have not behaved well, get out. That has been obliterated completely. So in fact now it's a license. If you are a robber, they have turned it into a license. They say provided you bring something home, you know, so that some people in your home also eat something. If you are not able to get to where they are slaughtering the animal, then you should not be a leader. And so the militarization, commercialization of elections is possibly the worst enemy of dealing with corruption. Because the oversight, which should be parliament, in order to get to parliament, you need 500 million at least to enter parliament, which you would have spent. So you actually enter parliament to look for more money for the next election. That's why for me, I can't spend a lot of time talking about the corrupt MPs. It is the system in which they operate. If you are not corrupt, you will not become an MP, actually. So they must, the parliament is like a market. Whoever passes through must pay, you know, including Mr. Museveni himself. He has to pay the MPs to pass what he wants to get. And he knows if he doesn't pay, they will also raise voice on him, on what they passed for him. So, how can you deal with corruption? If the owners of the money, the people whose money they are stealing, our money, if we have no sanctions on those who steal our money, we have none. That had been crushed. Now the official corruption went into overdrive. At the beginning of the NRA, still Museveni was taking money from the budget, but he would hide it in the Ministry of Defense. There was a special vote there for him, which only the people of defense knew about, which was not accountable, which was only, money would only be released from it expressly on his orders. Give so and so, give so and so, give so and so. But once these other systems were completely now dealt with, he now gets it officially from Parliament. That's how this ended year of 2023-24, he spent 802 billion in the State House, while the average money for a district is 30 to 40 billion. So that is corruption. What else is it? You cannot take 802 billion for your home in a highly indebted poor country. You are the biggest corrupt entity in the country. No doubt. He cannot run away. So all the suffering, all these street children you see, well, everybody should point a finger at him, because that's where it all comes from. Then, of course, there has been the land grabbing. Again, partly official corruption. They get public land and officially give it to friends and in-laws and relatives and, you know, prime land that they are investors. They now coined that investor. Public land. Land for schools, land for university, land for hospitals. Butabika land was taken for prisons, for what, you know, wherever they, because at least people have been, at least within the law, they refuse to give him power over all other land. So now they have been just stealing the government land, largely. Also private, they come and create all kinds of situations to take public land, land grabbing, but those are generally individuals also. But the official stealing of public land is unbelievable. And possibly the worst perpetrator of all this corruption is the tenderpreneurship. That we have in the country. Every deal is sealed in State House. Every deal. State House is the clearing house of any deal. If you see whether it's a building like this coming up, you know that State House has a hand in it. If you see any factory, it was negotiated in State House. If you see any road being constructed, the one who won the tender of the road won it in State House. To the extent I hear now he is the arbiter. Now you took the other one yesterday. Now you wait. Let this one now take this one. The other one take. That is how business is conducted in Uganda. Every investor who wants to invest in Uganda must first find a way of reaching State House. And reaching State House is through their relatives, friends, and so on. So all that and more, again, because of time I can't go in it, but what I want to demonstrate is simply that we cannot talk about corruption later on, dealing with it, ending it, fighting it, without fighting the entity called Museveni and his family. We can't. It's a joke. It's like a beehive. Can kill many bees as long as the queen is still there producing more bees. The bee, what do they call it? The bee group will remain intact. A colony. The bee group, you know, the Kiswa of bees. You cannot deal with it without looking for. Or the ant hill. Ekiswa kyenyini, the Kiswa. It will continue building unless you dig and get where the queen resides. So the queen of corruption is in the State House. That must be made abundantly clear. And that's why now, indeed, it's like a royal home. It's a royal home with princes and princess. They are there. The opulence in the State House is unprecedented. Opulence, which is again part of official corruption. Opulence. Because why should a president of a highly indebted poor country, for example, buy a presidential jet at $60 or $80 million to sit at the airport doing nothing? You hire pilots, engineers, to work on it, but it's doing nothing until you want to travel abroad. It can't be internally, because internally that's the only place it can land. But we all spend, you know, and the rest of the other opulent expenditures in the State House is all part of this corruption and emulated by all the others. So that's why whoever becomes anything wants an escort. Escort you for what? You know? Escort vehicle, lead vehicle, what, you know? Including all these peasants we have been suffering with in the trenches as soon as they get into office. Because they have an example to watch from.